Senator Merkley, thank you for joining me from Washington, D.C. today. We're recording this interview on Friday, and we have learned that in addition to the Oregon National Guard troops being deployed to Portland, the White House has directed Secretary Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to Portland. Can you tell us what to expect here?
Well, I wish I could, because we don't know what that means. It sounds very much like the same announcement he made last Thursday, in which he said he was directing the Secretary of War to send troops and that they were going to be instructed to use full force and that he was going to do a number on Portland. Of course, now, at this moment, we have 200 Oregon National Guard member in training, and there's a command team coming in from Colorado, is our understanding, to take control of them. We lose the leadership of our Oregon National Guard when the troops are federalized. And we have the hearing today about whether or not the president's met the standard of the law in order to federalize troops without a governor, and that means there has to be a rebellion or an invasion, which neither of which we have. And by the way, when I say rebellion, the understanding of what that was a violent, armed, organized group working against the government and often trying to overthrow the government. That is not what's been happening in Portland, so I'm hoping the district court will issue a stay.
The president's spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, says President Trump will end the radical left's reign of terror in Portland. How do you respond to that statement?
Well, I saw a lot of peaceful activity in Portland, people enjoying the cafes and the waterfront. I went past the ice building twice. There'd been a few incidents over 3 months. But what we know is that Trump is sending folks to Portland in order to create more violence and then use that violence to expand his authoritarian powers. My message to Portlanders and Oregonians in general is don't take the bait. This is authoritarian, trying to create situations to distract what he's doing to America on health care and on the cost, if you will, of groceries and the cost of utilities and the chaos of these tariffs going up and down and all of these attacks on our freedoms, freedom of assembly, and freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. He's trying to distract from all of that. So he wants essentially to create riots. Don't help him. Don't take the bait.
We also heard Caroline Leavitt say the White House is reviewing aid that could be cut in Portland. What does that mean? Do you know?
Well, I think it speaks for itself. The administration has been looking at weaponizing everything they can. We saw them cut grants only to blue states on energy projects. We've seen the president weaponize the Justice Department to go after people he considers to be his political enemies. This is what happens in an authoritarian state, not in a republic. Our republic's under the greatest peril since the Civil War, with this authoritarian assault. It's three things, the scholars tell us, that lead to the downfall of a republic: a rubber-stamped Congress, a court that hands more power to the executive, and an authoritarian, strong-arm style president. And we've got all three. So, folks, our republic is in grave danger.
We do know, of course, we've talked about this, that Oregon National Guard troops are expected in Portland. President Trump calling them up to protect federal property and personnel. I assume you believe that they're not needed here.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, before he started instigating more protests through his statements, there were a few scuffles over the last 3 months, but this is normal policing stuff. In other words, that test for federalizing the National Guard, Oregon National Guard, without the support of the governor, has to meet the test that there is a violent, armed, organized group working against the government with the aim often of overthrowing the government. There is nothing like that going on here, and that's why he's basically stretching the boundaries. He's saying there's an invasion from within, this very McCarthyist strategy to turn Americans against Americans. But we have to stand and try to save the vision of government by and for the people, not by and for an authoritarian who's making the world over for billionaires. Remember, come back to what's happening right now. They passed a bill that gutted health care for millions of Americans in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires. They gutted child nutrition to fund tax breaks for billionaires. And they ran up a projected $30 trillion in additional national debt to do tax breaks for billionaires. This is government buying for billionaires. Families lose, billionaires win. And that is not what happens when you have a we the people government. When you have we the people government, you're aiming for families to thrive, and the rich, the billionaires, they have to pay their fair share.
You know, there are some Oregonians who welcome the deployment of the National Guard in Portland. I've heard from them. You may have too. What is your concern about having them here to protect federal buildings and employees?
Well, certainly there's a group called the Federal Protective Service. That's their assigned role. But when you start sending the military into our cities, and remember what the president said when he got together with those 800 generals a couple days ago. He said, I'm putting you up to a loyalty test. You don't like what I'm doing? Go out that door. I will strip your rank. I will end your career. He's expecting not loyalty to the Constitution, but loyalty to himself. That should scare every red-blooded patriot. And then he said, and generals, we're going to send you into the cities as training grounds for putting the military around America. This is preparation for, well, if a strong man does something that really profoundly produces domestic dissent, like calling an emergency and postponing election, and people protest, he's training the troops to be able to go in and suppress that dissent. Again, we have a bright line. It's called the Posse Comitatus Act. It has been there for 150 years. It says the military is for defending our borders, not to deploy against our own citizens. When you start deploying the military against our own citizens, you've crossed into a realm that is very, very dangerous to the survival of our republic.
We are doing this interview on Friday, and as of 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, the federal government remains shut down. What will it take for Democrats to give Republicans the votes needed to pass the clean stopgap funding bill?
Well, Republicans have said, well, there is no clean bill. That's their term. And what they mean is a partisan bill, the same partisan extension that they did in March 15th. And what has happened since March 15th is they've made the world much worse. They have proceeded to pass this big, ugly betrayal of a bill. Trump called it the big, beautiful bill, but now he wants to change the name because he knows people don't think it's beautiful at all. And why do people not think it's beautiful? Well, it attacks health care in multiple ways. First of all, this coming, well, next month in November, when people see the prices on buying insurance on the exchange, it's estimated to go up by 68% in Oregon and 75% nationally. And in some cases, that could be an additional expense of $8,000 to $25,000 for a family, which means families won't be able to buy health care. And if they can't buy it, they don't go to the doctor when they get sick. They only go when they have to go to the emergency room. It's the most expensive form of care. And if it's something like a cancer, it may be untreatable by the time you go to a doctor. And then in addition, if they don't have insurance and therefore there's no way to compensate for that care, it means less revenue for our clinics and our hospitals. And then they have stage 2 that comes into effect January 2027. They put this after the next election. And that's the one that rolls out the red carpet for the rich and red tape for folks on our Oregon health plan. And that's the one that will devastate health care for an estimated 235,000 Oregonians will lose their Oregon health plan. And then they have stage 3. And stage 3 comes in 2028. Stage 3, attack on health care, says that the states cannot raise money for the match in the fashion they've done in the past. And if Oregon doesn't have a match for the federal funds, then we won't have to shrink our health care in Oregon by a dramatic amount. So this 3-staged attack is what they're defending by instigating a shutdown. We're saying, hey, 2 simple principles. Reverse the attack on health care, and second, put in a clause that the president actually has to spend the money as indicated in the spending bill, that there is laws are not suggestions.
Republicans say negotiations on health care tax credits can wait until the government is funded again. And you say to that?
Well, I say to that right now the insurance companies are putting out their new pricing, and even outside the exchange is going up by double-digit inflation in almost every single policy. So waiting simply means destroying health care for families across America.
Shutdown puts federal workers in a tough spot. Most will not be paid during the shutdown, including those that haven't been furloughed and still have to remain on the job, including the troops, TSA officers, and air traffic controllers. How do you respond to those workers who need their paychecks right now?
Well, it is absolutely terrible, but I can tell you that I'm hearing from workers that they want us to stand up for American families, including them, that which means ending this attack on healthcare that will devastate healthcare for everyone. Let's say you're a federal worker in a community and the clinic shut down. It's not just the folks who lose their health insurance who are hurt, it's everybody in the community loses their health care. And our senators who represent the states, Maryland and Virginia, have the highest percent of federal workers. Everything they're hearing is carry the fight for Americans. We know that we will get paid eventually. It's sure for sure an inconvenience. It's a massive, but it's the Republicans who are doing this. And so the pressure mounts on the Republicans. We saw them coming across the floor yesterday and saying, we know we're doing devastating impacts on our own citizens, and we don't like it. Trump forced us to do this. And we're like, okay, then give us the votes. They could have voted today to pass the Democratic continuing resolution, but I just came from the floor. They voted against it. And so they're saying they want to fix it, but they don't have the spine and the guts to stand up to Trump and actually vote to fix it. So hopefully Americans will continue to cry out and say, come on, Republicans, what are you doing? Why are you doing a billionaire's win and inflicting all this pain on our American families?
Yeah, both sides certainly blaming each other, no question about that. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, thank you for your time, for being here, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Steve. Take care now.
You bet.